There's something quietly destructive about the constant need for validation. It doesn't announce itself, it doesn't break things loudly, but it eats away at your self-respect one, like at a time. And worse, it's invisible to most of us. You think you're just trying to connect. You think you're just being polite or humble or checking in, but slowly you find yourself living in reaction to other people's opinions, not in response to your own conviction. The world now, where approval is currency, you can count it. Hearts, thumbs up, views, claps. And because it's countable, we start to believe it's real. We think if something is measurable, it must matter. But here's the problem. Respect doesn't live in the visible. It lives in the invisible. You can't see respect being earned in the moment. It shows up over time, quietly, steadily, and usually only after you've stopped trying so hard to get it. The irony is that the more you chase validation, the less you appear worthy of respect. Think about it. When someone constantly looks to others for permission to speak, for permission to act, for approval after every move, they don't come across as strong. They come across as uncertain. They follow clarity. You don't respect the person who is always asking, was that okay? You respect the person who says, this is what I believe and here's why. Even if you don't fully agree with them, you can respect their courage, their conviction, because they're not waiting for the crowd to nod before they move. There's a profound difference between needing support and needing validation. Support says, let's do this together. Validation says, tell me I'm enough before I try. One is empowering, the other is paralyzing. And when we confuse the two, we trap ourselves in a loop where we can't move forward without applause. Now, I understand why we do it. We're wired to belong. We're social creatures. Approval used to mean safety. If your tribe accepted you, you lived another day. If they rejected you, you were alone with the wolves. So it makes sense biologically. But what kept us alive back then is keeping us stuck today. Today, survival isn't the challenge. Meaning is. And you cannot find meaning while constantly asking others to define your worth. Real respect comes when you start showing up as you are, not as you think others want you to be. It comes when you speak the truth you believe, not the truth that trends. That kind of honesty. Raw, unpolished, uncomfortable honesty is magnetic. Not because it pleases everyone, but because it doesn't try to. Have you ever been around someone who doesn't need to prove anything? They just are who they are. They don't brag. They don't apologize for their presence. They don't look around to see if they're being approved of. They just speak and listen and move with intention. That's respect. You don't even have to like everything about them, but you respect them because there's no mask. And masks, while attractive for a while, are exhausting, both to wear and to watch. When you stop seeking validation, you actually start listening better. You stop filtering everything through the question, do they like me? And you start asking, what's true here? You become curious instead of cautious, open instead of defensive. And that shift from approval seeking to truth seeking is the beginning of leadership. Real leadership, not title-based leader, the kind of leadership that changes cultures, relationships, lives. People respect someone who can say, here's my take. I might be wrong, but I believe this matters. That humility combined with clarity, that's a rare and powerful thing. And it can't happen if your compass is built on other people's reactions. You need your own internal compass, something that doesn't spin every time the crowd moves. Here's a hard truth. Not everyone will like you when you stop seeking their validation. Some people are comfortable when you're small, when you agree, when you play along. But the moment you stop needing their nod, you become inconvenient. You become unpredictable, and that scares people. But again, you have to ask yourself, do you want to be liked? Or do you want to be respected? And respect doesn't mean people always agree with you. It means they trust your voice. They trust your intent. They trust that you're not just saying what will get you liked. You're saying what needs to be said. And trust is the foundation of every meaningful relationship, personal or professional. Trust builds loyalty. Trust builds collaboration. Trust builds impact. And trust is impossible when people sense you're just mirroring them back to themselves. And you stop chasing validation. You start attracting people who align with your values, not just your vibe. These are the people who challenge you, grow with you, support you, not because they're fans of your image, but because they respect your character. And those relationships, they're rare and they're real. So how do you start? You stop asking for permission to be yourself. You start making decisions based on your principles, not your popularity. You speak when something matters, even if your voice shakes. You admit when you're wrong without the fear that it'll make you less worthy. And you stop needing every move to be met with applause. You don't need the whole room to clap. You need to be able to look in the mirror and say, I didn't betray myself today. That's where respect begins. And when people see that, they might not cheer right away. But over time, they'll lean in, they'll listen a little longer, they'll trust a little more, and eventually they'll follow, not because you asked for it, but because you earned it. There's something deeply admirable about a person who can say, I don't know. It's not a weakness, it's not a gap in intelligence. In fact, it's one of the clearest signs of wisdom. Because only someone secure enough in who they are can admit when they're unsure or when they're wrong. But for too many of us, that sentence, I was wrong, feels like surrender and feels like losing. And so we double down, we defend, we justify, not because we're right, but because we're afraid of what it means to be wrong. Here's the truth. The need to always be right doesn't build respect, it builds distance. People stop listening, they stop engaging, they start nodding just to keep the peace. Because when you've made it unsafe to disagree with you, you've made it impossible to grow with you. Respect isn't given to the one who wins every argument. It's given to the one who makes room for others, even when those others think differently. You see, being right might win you a debate, but being open earns you loyalty. And loyalty isn't built in moments of agreement. It's built in moments of disagreement handled with grace. Think about the people you trust most in your life. The ones you go to when things are unclear. Are they the ones who always have an answer? Or are they the ones who ask great questions? The ones who create space, not pressure. The ones who let you explore, challenge, wonder out loud. That's not an accident. You trust them because they don't need to dominate. They don't need to impress. They just need to understand and to be understood. When someone is obsessed with being right, they stop listening. They wait for their turn to speak. Their focus isn't on the conversation, it's on the scoreboard. And once that happens, they've already lost. Because conversations are not competitions, they're collaborations. The goal isn't to win, the goal is to learn, to connect, to build something together. We live in a world that confuses confidence with certainty. But real confidence isn't the belief that you're always right. It's the ability to stay grounded when you're not. It's knowing that being wrong doesn't make you less. It makes you human. It makes you reachable. And that's where respect lives, in the space between certainty and humility. The need to always be right is often just fear in disguise, fear of looking weak, fear of losing control, fear of not being enough. But here's the paradox. The more you chase the appearance of strength, the weaker you appear. The more you insist, the more people resist. Not because they dislike your point, but because they dislike being cornered. We respect those who make us feel seen, who make us feel heard. And it's impossible to do that while clinging to the idea that only your view is valid. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say in a conversation is, tell me more. Not because you're agreeing, but because you're curious. Because you care enough to understand before being understood. There's a kind of leadership that doesn't need to be the loudest voice in the room. It doesn't need to remind everyone who's in charge. It doesn't dominate the room with facts and figures. It leads by example, by empathy, by listening deeply. That kind of leader isn't afraid to change their mind. They don't see it as weakness, they see it as progress. People don't follow the one who never makes a mistake. They follow the one who owns their mistakes, learns from them, and moves forward. Because that kind of behavior signals safety. And safety is the foundation of every high-performing team, every healthy relationship, every lasting organization. If you're always right, there's no room for anyone else to contribute. And when people feel like their input doesn't matter, they stop offering it. You lose good ideas, you lose fresh perspectives, you lose the creative tension that drives innovation, and worst of all, you lose the trust of those around you. We have to learn to separate our ideas from our identity. Just because someone challenges your thinking doesn't mean they're challenging your worth, but when you fuse the two, when being wrong feels like being unworthy, you'll fight to the death over something trivial just to protect your ego. And in that battle, everyone loses. There's power in saying, you might be right. Not as a tactic to end a debate, but as a genuine acknowledgement that truth isn't always singular, that two perspectives can live side by side, both carrying weight. That sometimes the goal isn't to find the perfect answer, but to sit with the complexity long enough to grow through it. I've watched teams transform, not because they found better processes or smarter strategies, but because a leader learned to say, I don't have all the answers, what do you think? And suddenly, people felt invited, they felt valuable, they felt like they mattered. That's how you build respect, not by knowing it all, but by opening the door for others to step in. Think about a conversation where you knew the other person just wanted to win. How did you feel? Defensive, small, exhausted? Now think about a conversation where someone really listened. Even when you disagreed, you probably walked away feeling stronger, not weaker. Because respect doesn't require agreement. It requires dignity. There's something liberating about no longer needing to be right. It frees you from the pressure to perform. It opens up the space for genuine connection. And most importantly, it shows people that you value truth more than ego, that you care more about growth than pride, that you're someone they can trust. And trust leads to influence. Influence leads to change. But it starts with humility. So ask yourself, are you more committed to being right or to doing what's right? Are you building relationships or just winning arguments? Are you seeking truth or just trying to protect your image? You don't earn respect by proving yourself constantly. You earn it by making others feel safe enough to be themselves around you. And that begins when you let go of the need to always be right. Because the goal isn't to be perfect, it's to be real. And real people, humble, open, evolving people, are the ones we respect most. One of the easiest ways to lose respect is to talk about people when they're not in the room. And one of the quickest ways to earn it is to speak as if they are. The moment you use someone else's name as a tool to elevate yourself or to tear them down, you've told the world far more about your character than you ever intended to. Gossip doesn't build connection, it builds walls. Slowly, subtly, but always, eventually, destructively. It starts innocently, of course. You're just sharing a concern. You're just being honest, just venting. But soon enough, it becomes a habit. You start to find connection through criticism. You bond over shared negativity. You start sentences with, did you hear what she did? Or, I probably shouldn't say this, but, and before long, you find yourself in rooms where trust disappears the moment someone leaves. Gossip is the illusion of connection. It tricks us into thinking we're building relationships when all we're really doing is breaking someone else's. It's cheap, it's easy, and it always costs more than we think. The person you gossip with today, they're watching. They're wondering what you say when they're the one who's not there. Because if you'll do it to someone else, what's to stop you from doing it to them? We all crave belonging. That's natural. But there's a difference between finding belonging through shared values and finding it through shared enemies. One builds something real. The other just creates noise. If people can feel the difference, even if they can't name it right away, over time, the people who build their relationships through gossip find themselves surrounded by distrust, even if everyone still smiles at them. Respect is born in how you talk about people when they're not around. It's not about perfection, it's about principle. It's about asking yourself, is what I'm about to say useful? Is it true? Is it kind? Would I say it with them here? Not because you're trying to be liked, but because you're trying to live with integrity. That word, integrity, literally means whole. When what you say and who you are line up, people can feel it. You don't have to prove yourself. You don't have to be loud. There's a quiet power in integrity that speaks for itself. Undermining others doesn't make you stronger. It makes you smaller. You might get a laugh. You might get attention, but it won't be the kind that lasts, because respect can't survive in environments where people feel unsafe. And when gossip is normal, safety disappears. People start second guessing. They start holding back. Creativity shrinks. Trust crumbles. And all of that begins with just a few harmless comments. But there's something even more damaging about gossip. It changes how you see the world. When you constantly look for flaws in others, you start to see only flaws. You become hyper aware of other people's mistakes, missteps, shortcomings, and slowly you lose your ability to see their strengths, their efforts, their humanity. And here's the thing. What you see in others, you start to feel in yourself. If all you notice is the worst in people, you begin to carry that same suspicion inward. It becomes a lens you can't take off. Real leaders, real friends, real professionals don't gossip. Not because they're perfect, but because they understand the cost. They know that words can be weapons or bridges, and they choose to build. They choose to protect the people who trust them even when they're not there, especially when they're not there. Because that's what respect looks like in practice. Not just being kind to someone's face, but being loyal to their dignity behind their back. There's a quote I love, live in such a way that if someone spoke badly of you, no one would believe it. That kind of life isn't built by charm or cleverness. It's built by consistency. By refusing to join in the easy conversations that cost other people their credibility. By being the person who says, let's not go there when gossip shows up. It's not about silencing others. It's about raising the standard. And when you do that, when you stop gossip in its tracks, you earn something more powerful than popularity. You earn trust. People begin to realize that you're safe. That you won't trade their name for your benefit. That you'll protect their reputation the way you'd want yours protected. That kind of loyalty, it's rare. And it's deeply respected. And this doesn't mean you avoid hard conversations. It doesn't mean you don't hold people accountable. But there's a difference between speaking truth to someone's face and cutting them down behind their back. One is brave, the other is cowardly. One creates change, the other creates confusion. One builds respect, the other buries it. We have to ask ourselves, what kind of person do I want to be? What kind of culture am I contributing to? In my home, my workplace, my team. Am I creating an environment where people feel safe? Or am I allowing gossip to become the norm? You can be the one who sets the tone. You can be the one who makes people feel seen, not scrutinized. You can be the one who builds trust, not tears it down. And it starts with your words. It starts with the small moments, the moments no one else might notice, but that shape the kind of person you are when no one's watching. Respect isn't loud. It doesn't shout or compete. It whispers in how you treat people when they have nothing to offer you, when they're not popular, when they're not around. It's easy to speak well of someone when everyone else does, but real respect is speaking well of them when no one else will. You don't have to engage in every conversation. You don't have to respond to every joke. You can simply choose silence, or better, redirection. You can change the subject. You can say something kind. You can stand up for someone who's not there to defend themselves. And every time you do, you become a person people trust. a person people turn to, a person people respect. So the next time you're tempted to share that story, that detail, that inside scoop, ask yourself, am I adding value or just adding noise? Am I building something or breaking someone? Because every word you speak is a brick. Use it to build walls or to build bridges. The choice is always yours. And when you consistently choose to build, when you refuse to gossip, when you protect people's dignity, when you speak with integrity, you won't need to demand respect, you'll already have it. There is something universally respected about a person who owns their actions, who doesn't flinch, who doesn't deflect, who doesn't hide behind excuses when things go wrong. It's not because they never fail, it's because when they do, they face it, they step up, they take responsibility. And that quality of accountability has become so rare in today's culture that when we see it, we stop and take notice. We all know what it looks like when someone avoids responsibility. They shift the blame, they point fingers, they find clever ways to reframe a failure so it doesn't land on them. And for a moment, it works. They escape the discomfort. But they also lose something every time they do it. They lose trust. They lose respect. They lose a piece of their own growth. Because every time you avoid responsibility, you also avoid the lesson that comes with it. Responsibility isn't a burden, it's a gift. It's the opportunity to own your impact, to grow through mistakes, to become the kind of person people can rely on, not just when things are going well, but when things fall apart. That's the true test of character, how you show up when things get messy, when plans fail, when something you touched didn't work out. And the question becomes, do you stand up and say, that's on me, or do you look around for someone else to carry the weight? Avoiding responsibility is often rooted in fear, fear of looking incompetent, fear of losing status, fear of disappointing others. And that fear makes sense. We're human. We all want to be seen as capable. We want to be respected. But the irony is the very act of trying to protect our image by dodging responsibility ends up damaging the very thing we're trying to preserve, our integrity. People don't respect perfection, they respect honesty. They respect the person who says, I got it wrong, and here's what I'm going to do to make it right. That level of ownership builds something deeper than admiration. It builds trust. And trust is the foundation of all meaningful relationships, whether in leadership, in teams, in friendships, or in families. Think about the last time someone let you down, but then took full responsibility without making excuses. It probably changed how you saw them, not as weak, but as strong. Because it takes courage to admit when you've fallen short. It takes maturity to say, this one's on me. And in that moment, they didn't lose respect, they earned it. Now think about the opposite. Someone who made a mistake, but blamed the system, the timing, the team, the weather, anything but themselves. They might have protected their ego for a moment, but at what cost? They created doubt. Doubt in their leadership, doubt in their reliability, doubt in their ability to truly grow. Because when you dodge responsibility, you're also dodging the opportunity to evolve. We live in a culture where deflecting blame has become an art form. We see it in politics, in corporations, even in our own homes. But what if we turn that around? What if we made taking responsibility the mark of strength instead of shame? What if instead of asking who's to blame, we started asking, what can I do? That small shift changes everything. It moves us from victimhood to agency, from helplessness to possibility. Responsibility isn't about guilt. It's not about punishing ourselves for every misstep. It's about alignment. It's about making sure our actions reflect our values. And when they don't, we course correct, not because someone forced us to, but because that's who we are. That's who we want to be. The most respected leaders I know aren't the ones who never mess up. They're the ones who never hide from it when they do, but they're the ones who say, this happened on my watch and I'm not running from it. And when they do that, their people don't abandon them, they rally around them. Because leadership isn't about always getting it right. It's about being someone others can count on, especially when it's hard. There's a phrase I come back to often, you can't grow what you don't own. If you pretend something isn't your fault, you never get to fix it. You stay stuck, you repeat the same cycles. But when you own your part, even if it's just a small part, you reclaim your power. You take back your ability to create change. Avoiding responsibility might feel like protection, but it's really paralysis. It keeps you small. It keeps you afraid. It keeps you dependent on avoiding blame rather than stepping into leadership. But when you face the consequences head on, when you stop hiding and start owning, you begin to build something deeper. Self-respect. Because there is no respect from others without self-respect first. And there's no self-respect without accountability. I'm not saying this is easy. It's not. It's vulnerable. It's uncomfortable. It takes practice. But every time you do it, you get stronger. You become someone who doesn't run from hard conversations. Someone who doesn't throw others under the bus. Someone who says, we failed, but I'm here and I'm taking the lead on making it right. You'll be amazed at how people respond when you step into responsibility. You'll stop chasing respect and start receiving it. Not because you demand it, but because you embody it. Because you've shown that you care more about the mission than your image, more about progress than pride. And here's the beauty of it. When you take responsibility, you give others permission to do the same.